Welcome back to another episode of Two Guys in the Bible. Wherever you are, thank you for clicking on the video and tuning in to this week's show. I hope this blesses you. That's why we do it, right, Cody?
Yep.
And bless you, and hopefully to honor and glorify God in everything we say, everything we do. If you notice right here in this section, right here, can you see that? Right, this section?
Yeah.
This is a book. It's a fantastic book written by a pretty good fella. Pastor, friend, Mac Tomlinson. It is In Light of Eternity. It's a biography on Leonard Ravenhill. Go ahead and tell them a little bit about that.
Yeah, so several years ago, almost a decade ago now, Mac wrote the first edition. He was encouraged to do a second edition with some added chapters and things. And so this is the second edition. And, I don't think that you could probably say it any better than his son says it in the back here. David Ravenhill says, "My father lived daily in light of eternity, always seeking to please the one who enlisted him as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. Before he ever stood in the pulpit, he stood before God. He was a man of prayer. Prayer was his life, and his preaching reflected the fact that he had been alone with God." And it was the first real heavy, big book that I ever read as a Christian. And it's just a page turner. Mac writes very well. He's autographed it inside for you guys, for whoever gets this book.
Which goes into the next part. One of you viewing this has the opportunity to win this very copy right here. Here's what you have to do to win. You have to be a subscriber to our YouTube channel, Two Guys in the Bible. You need to like this video that you're watching. And you need to leave a comment below telling us which episode of ours has been your favorite, or what have we talked about or said that has encouraged or convicted you the most. Sorry. Those are the three things. Corona. Those are the three things we ask that you do to be entered to win a copy of this book.
Yeah. I don't have much else to say. Other than I would encourage, I don't know if anybody reads a lot of biographies. There is a way you need to read Christian biographies. One, you're not trying to be Leonard Ravenhill. God was doing something with Leonard Ravenhill that he's not necessarily going to do with you. You read it to be helped. You read it to see what God has done in a man and rejoice in that and be thankful for that. And you're reading it to be encouraged. And then you're reading it to take things from it that you can apply to your own life. Like, for instance, Ravenhill spent 6 or 7 hours in prayer a day, sometimes more. Well, for most people who have a job or moms who have children, that's not going to happen. But what aspect of that can you take for your life and apply it and be encouraged? So I always tell people after I read that, I wish I would have had Romans 8:1 memorized. There is no condemnation for those who are in Christ. Because his whole life is how rude and unprofessional. His whole life really was lived for the Lord. I mean, he was a godly man. Yeah,
he's a godly man, a terrific preacher. You talk about being convicted under a man's preaching. He could do it. The back of the book is filled with quotes. Straight from him. We call them one-liners. He was what's known as the king of one-liners. One of my favorites is he's talking about preaching, and his preaching is always, like I said earlier, it's convicting, it's challenging, it's powerful, it's gospel-centered. And one of his quotes that I love the most is, "I've preached in a lot of Baptist churches once."
Yeah, that's right. There's one quote in here I saw this morning that was a typical. Many want to be good, but few want to be holy. So, just things like that. It's a good book.
All right. So anyway, what do you are going to win it? You have to be a subscriber, which we have over 30 now.
Yes.
So that's the point. That's the reason we decided to give it. I know that's not a ton compared to many YouTubers out there, but
It's good for us.
it's
like
good
it.
for us. And so be a subscriber, like this video, and leave a comment below.
Yep.
All right. So Cody, let's get into the show, man.
Yeah, real quick. We tried to do this video last week.
Oh, right. Yeah.
There were some things that we weren't necessarily fond of, so we took it off and we want to redo it.
All right.
Here we are. We're going to talk about this article that was in the Harvard magazine, which is really a guy took this certain professor's writing an 80-page paper on homeschooling, the risk of homeschooling is what the title of the article is in the Harvard magazine. And basically, I think, interviews this woman and takes excerpts out of her thing and comments on them. So you can't, hopefully, see I can find a way to put this on the video, but you have to start with the image.
The image on here is, I'm going to try to screenshot it or something and drop it right here so you can see it, but go ahead and explain it to them.
So it's essentially a house made of books, okay? And there's a kid inside the house looking through prison bars. So alluding to that homeschoolers are imprisoned in their own home. On the one side of the wall is a book of reading, writing, arithmetic, and the Bible formed. And then there's kids outside the house. They're just frolicking around and having this great time. Those who go to public school which is weird because a lot of public schools I drive by look very similar to prisons because there's no windows. So I'm not sure, I used to tell my wife who goes to Athens and went to Athens, I said, there's no windows. How'd you guys look outside? I mean, there's nothing, So I don't know. It's alluding to the fact that homeschoolers are in prison. Those who are outside in public schools are free and enjoying life and so on and so forth. So just trying to, right off the top, just poke at the homeschooling crowd. The Bible's in there, alluding to that it's in prison.
Bars.
Yeah. So.
All right. Yeah, so that's the image before the article even gets going.
Yeah. So this woman, Elizabeth Bartholet, is a faculty director of the law school's child advocacy program, which is a little strange to me that Harvard has a division like that. I don't understand why they need that. But they have one. Okay. So her whole idea is that there's this rapid increase of numbers of American families opting to out of sending their kids to school. Here's the number. 3% to 4% of school-age children in the United States, a number equivalent to those attending charter schools and larger. So 3 to 4% is apparently is rapidly increasing.
That's incredible amount of numbers.
I mean, I would be happy that if the homeschool increases, right? But you make it sound like there's 70% or something. It's 3 or 4% right now.
Yeah, of 390 something million.
330 million people.
330 million people. Yeah. That's
So
not very many folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But basically, she is recommending a ban on the practice of homeschooling. She says it not only violates children's rights to a meaningful education and their right to be protected from potential child abuse, but may keep them from contributing positively to a democratic society.
All right, let's take those things one at a time.
Okay.
The first one was it keeps them from
it violates the children's rights to a meaningful education.
Okay, violates the children's rights to a meaningful education. That could not be farther from the truth.
Right.
I know personally kids that were homeschooled, yet by the time they're 18, because they're under such a rigorous curriculum, and because you can dual enroll, by the time they're 18, they're almost done with their undergrad degree. These kids are smart, super intelligent, because their parents and themselves, I'll give some credit to the children as well, were committed to learning.
Let's talk about this false idea of children's rights as though they're an autonomous individual without any authority over them.
Right.
Do they have rights? Sure. No one's...
Sure, yeah.
Absolutely.
As image bearers of God first,
Yes.
and as citizens of this nation,
Yes, but
they
you
have rights.
You don't become a real free citizen with the freedom and rights until you have. There is some sense where you earn that by being responsible and by knowledge and understanding things and those. You know what I mean? Like we don't just turn people loose. Anyway, that bothers me. Because the children are under the protection. First, it's for the protection of the children. I don't turn Amos loose because he has rights. He's 3. Right. You know what he does? He takes a water hose and sprays his sister. Or just, hey, spray the flower. No, I'm going to spray everything else. Okay, you don't have the right to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So yes, they have some rights, but as a parent, I guide and take care of those. Protect him because he wants to go in the road.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing with people like this. We'll probably get into this more as we get more into it. But these people want to strip all the rights away from parents. That's the goal of an anti-homeschooling.
Yeah, and you'll see it here.
Yeah.
And so here's how you know your argument's terrible. You start throwing out just the most extreme cases of anything. The right to be protected from potential child abuse.
Okay.
So here's what's happening. She's setting us up. If we protect homeschooling, that means we want children to be abused.
Right. That's virtue signaling. That is taking something. Does that happen?
Yes, and
Are
it's
some
sad.
homeschool kids abused? Yes,
And they should be removed.
And the parents should be punished.
Yes, exactly.
But to think, or because that happens, doesn't mean that homeschooling should be banned. I mean, hey, guess what? Kids are also abused at public schools.
Yeah.
Women, elderly people are also abused in nursing homes.
So is there ever abuse in marriage?
Yeah.
Do we get rid of marriage?
No.
So now, we don't want to downplay the abuse. Like we said, I want the child to be protected. I want the child to be out of a situation like that and parents to be punished. But the potential child abuse is a reason for the ban. You're putting that out there so that anybody from here on who stands against a ban for homeschooling is actually for child abuse, is what you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
Which is idiotic.
Well, that's the same thing with the anti-gun lobbyists. Well, if you're pro-gun, that means you don't care about the kids that get shot in the schools. No, that's not true.
So let's talk about meaningful education for a moment. It's not to put public school on complete blast for this, but it is proven that many public school systems are not doing a meaningful job.
Because, to be fair, they're handcuffed.
Yes,
many
teachers that want to do a good
are
job,
handcuffed,
right?
And they're restricted from what they can and cannot teach.
Right, and then they're forced to teach things that they don't want to teach or shouldn't be taught. So part of this meaningful education
Be taught.
Yeah, sorry. This is why I need. This is never mind. This is evidence of why my wife's going to be doing most of the homeschooling. But this part of this meaningful education is, oh, by the way, children, there's 57 genders.
Yeah.
So this is meaningful education. But you're right. You have a group of people who probably do want to teach children things. They love to teach. They like history. They want to teach them math. They want to teach them these things, and they're forced to teach them according to the government and force things into the children's life that doesn't need to be.
Right.
So, and that it may keep them from contributing positively to a democratic society.
That's just ridiculous. What does she mean? So, because she sets her own standard, her own arbitrary standard of what it means to contribute positively to a democratic society, she inserts that in there. Well, she doesn't get to set that standard of what is positive and what's not positive. You know what's probably positive to her? While she writes this article talking about the potential abuses of homeschool kids, she's probably pro-abortion. Mm-hmm. She's probably pro-socialism. Mm-hmm. Because this world...
she is just by...
Yeah.
Right.
This worldview that she holds to has all these things at its foundation. Mm-hmm. So if you're not pro-abortion or pro-socialism, that means you don't contribute positively to a democratic society. Mm-hmm. That's the thing she's talking about. Mm-hmm. I know plenty of people that were homeschooled who contribute greatly to our democratic society.
And if you want to allude back to the picture that the Bible is a part of this and imprisoning these homeschoolers, and you try to seek to apply the Bible to these. Anybody who takes the Scriptures seriously wants their kids to have a meaningful education and wants them to contribute positively to society because they want them to be good citizens, moral, and also followers of Christ who then become the best citizens for our society.
Yeah.
And who are not idiots and who want to have a decent education with truth and with logic and reason and all of that. And every Christian who knows the Scriptures does not support child abuse.
Right.
But supports law that punishes those who abuse and helps those who are being abused. So, she starts arguing that there's, in 50 states, we have an essential unregulated regime in the area of homeschooling. It's just, there's no regulations. Good.
Praise the Lord for that.
I'm thankful for that.
There are in some states.
See, arguing with people, don't try to, in my estimation, don't try to pretend that, like, okay, she says it's bad that there's no regulation. I would just look at her and say, I think it's great there's no regulation.
Right.
You want to?
It's a difference of opinion.
Yes. It's just like when they say, well, you want to indoctrinate your kids. Oh, so what you do is education, but what I do is this big, scary word of indoctrination.
When in reality, all education is indoctrination.
Yes, and so I'll look at her and say, yes, it is that I want to indoctrinate my kids because someone's going to do it.
Yeah.
Either me or the world or you.
Yeah. I'd rather me as his parent.
Yes. So she keeps going. This means effectively, this unregulated regime, effectively that people can homeschool who never go to school themselves, who don't read or write themselves. Okay, I don't.
There's maybe 6 people in the world that homeschool their kids that can't read and write
Can't
themselves.
read or I don't.
See, this is just, it's ludicrous. That's what here's the reason you have to come up with silly arguments like that is because you have no foundational basis to stand on. The reason you have to use silly arguments is because there's no good arguments.
Right. So listen to this. In another handful of states, parents are not required to register their children as homeschooled. They can simply keep their kids at home.
Amen. Praise the Lord. That's a good thing.
Exactly. But what I love is how it's like, this is bad.
Yeah. Well, in her
big,
worldview,
scary homeschool, keeping your kids at home, bad.
in her worldview, it is.
So when it's not a bad thing. I shouldn't have to register my child. It's my child. Anyways. So, this practice, Bartholet says, can isolate children. She argues that one benefit of sending children to school at ages 4 or 5 is that teachers are mandated reporters required to alert authorities to evidence of child abuse and neglect. Again, she goes back to the child abuse. Teachers and other school personnel constitute the large percentage of people who report child protective services. She
and
explains,
you know what?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm happy we have teachers that do that.
Sure. Yes.
I'm happy that we have counselors that try to help these kids that have faced things like this. We know of one teacher who taught in public school that upon finding out that these 2 girls were not taken care of at all, really, she made sure they were fed, had clothes, were clean. So praise God for
absolutely.
For people like that.
Yeah.
Having said that, again, she's taking something. Do you know any homeschool parents that have ever abused their children?
I mean, not the ones that I know. I don't really associate.
I don't even know. Yeah, me either. And I know a lot. She's taking something that does happen, but in such a small minority, and she's using that as her best argument for this entire article.
Well, and this is not just, like you said, I'm thankful that there's public school teachers out there that do that type of thing. Here's the reality. It's not the public school teacher's responsibility to teach my children. There is a place. If you want to send your kids, if you want to or have to send your kids to public school, okay. But don't turn to me and then tell me with these faulty arguments that you don't get the right to homeschool your kids because you potentially could abuse them.
Or it's like them being in prison.
Or like them being in prison and you're not that educated. I may not be able to say the right words sometimes.
People don't think we know a lot about the things, but we do.
Yeah, exactly. So here's what she does. So this is how arguments work. Find a terrible argument, call everybody racist and potential child abusers, and then find one person
right
that this happened to so that you can fit this. And there's probably more than one, but find the one, and then you can use it. So here she finds the one.
She did?
Yes. The daughter of Idaho survivalist who never sent their children to school, this lady, Tara Westover, learned to read. She writes that she received no other formal education at home, but instead spent her teenage years working in her father's scrap business where severe injuries were common and endured abuse by an older brother. Bartholet doesn't see the book as an isolated case. This is a book, Educated is the name of the book. Isolated case of a family that slipped through the cracks. That's what can happen under the system in effect in most of the nation.
So because that can potentially happen.
Be done with it.
Let's wipe it all out. Let's demand through legislation, through the legal process, that you're not allowed to homeschool your kids because there are some bad people out there.
So yeah, so you can throw that argument right back at them. The abuse happens in public school.
It happens everywhere.
With males to females and females to males getting in relationships, abusing that way, abusing in other ways. So if that's the case, then get rid of public schools as well. Right. But you need to be consistent. But here's the problem. They're not consistent.
Right.
Children should grow up, this is a quote, exposed to democratic values, ideas about non-discrimination and tolerance of other people's viewpoints, which is hypocrisy because
She's being very intolerant
Exactly.
of our viewpoints. Here, I'll say this. Should, at some point, our children be aware of opposing worldviews out there among other people? Absolutely. Matter of fact, in 1 Peter 3:15, says to always be prepared to make a defense for those who question the hope that is in you.
Right.
And I believe one of the best ways we can make a defense of what we believe is by knowing what other people believe.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, my sons need to understand the worldview behind a lady like this, a worldview behind people who push and promote homosexuality, the worldview behind people that push and promote abortion, but not at 10 and 5. Mm-hmm. And I'll decide when they learn about these things, not someone else. It's my job and my responsibility to teach them these things.
And the reason why it is ours, and we see it that way, is because of what the Scriptures have told us. They're our children. We're responsible to raise them in the fear and the admonition of the Lord, to train and disciple them, to teach them what God has said, and He's given that responsibility to us. We want to please and honor Him, and so therefore we seek to be the prime disciplers of our children's life, which includes education, both in things that make them productive to society and the Christian faith. So here's another way you know that the argument's weak. Bartholet notes that some of these parents are extreme religious ideologues who question science, promote female subservience, and white supremacy.
Okay.
So, and the science that, as you've said, is that she's talking about is actually probably not real science for the most part.
No, it's always these people like her, people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Stephen Hawking, all these guys, when they say that religious people are anti-science, they're not talking about things that are observable, testable, and repeatable that were done based on observation and experimentation. They're not talking about... Christians do not deny that the earth is going around the sun. Mm-hmm. Christians do not deny that at one time a year this happens. Christians do not deny that the earth rotates one full round in 24 hours. We don't deny science, stuff that is observed and tested and repeated. Mm-hmm. When they say we deny science, they're talking about things that haven't been observed, tested, like evolution,
right?
Like human-caused radical climate change, like what else? I mean, there's a whole plethora of things out there. That's what they talk about when they say deny science. No, we don't.
Right.
We have the only... You know what we have? We have the foundational basis for science. They don't. Because the foundational... I don't want to go too far into this, but the foundational basis for science is induction. You know what induction is? Induction is the uniformity of nature, right? Which requires governing, a present governing, something governing all these things at the present for us to even be able to do science.
Right.
You know what? They don't have that because they'll say, well, this is all just a random cosmic accident.
Right. And then to throw in female subservience and white supremacy.
Okay.
So because we want to obey the Bible...
You notice she's hitting all the progressive talking points?
Oh, yeah. As if our wives are just the handmaiden's tale, whatever that. They're just abused into submission, which is completely false. And there's a total misunderstanding of what we would call wives submit to your husbands as unto the Lord. Like, we're not advocating for abuse. We're not advocating for heavy-handedness or anything. And then my favorite one, white supremacy. Because any Christian that doesn't fully buy into the social justice woke movement is a white supremacist.
Right.
I do not deny that there is racism that exists. I do not deny that there are people who are racist. But I do deny many of those social justice woke things.
I'm going to flip this back on her.
She's white, by the way.
If you believe, so here, she more than likely, because of her arguments here, and because I've studied this stuff over and over again, she'll hold to critical race theory and intersectionality. Mm-hmm. Critical race theory is the idea that Cody can't possibly understand anything because of he's blinded by his whiteness.
Right.
She probably holds to white privilege. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, because you were born with this colored skin, you have certain privileges that other people don't have. Based solely on skin, nothing else. So I'm going to flip this on her and tell her that if you actually believe what you're saying, you are the one that is an actual white supremacist. Because you believe, based on solely on the color of a person's skin, that they are better off than others. That is, by definition, white supremacy. I don't know any Christian homeschoolers that are white supremacists. I don't know any Christian homeschoolers that mistreat their wives.
But here's the thing. If any of that is true, it does not justify banning it all. If this is is what we're going to do with everything, then we should just all be sitting around doing nothing.
Right.
Period.
Hey man, sometimes boats sink.
Stop boating.
You can't ship anything anymore.
Done.
No fishing. I mean,
she goes on. She views the absence of regulations ensuring that homeschool children receive a meaningful education equivalent to that required in public schools as a threat to the U.S. democracy. So now homeschoolers are the next terrorists.
Do you know why she says
we're a threat?
That? We've talked about this before, because they want and need our children so that they can hopefully impute to them the worldview they want them to hold to. And if we keep them at home and we indoctrinate them, I'll proudly say that, with our own worldview, then that doesn't work out well for them in the future.
Right. And this is the other thing that I just love when people do this. Look at Europe and the countries in Europe. Germany has banned homeschooling. France requires home visits and annual tests. Okay, move to Germany and France.
If you want to live under a tyrannical government that has their hands in everything, go for it. I don't want to.
Well, yeah, and it's just like, if this is what you want so badly, go live there. Stop trying to transform.
She'd have to leave her cushy Harvard job.
Yes. So listen, the last paragraph is probably the best. She maintains that parents should have very significant rights to raise their children, with the beliefs and religious convictions that the parents hold, but requiring children to attend schools outside the home for 6 or 7 hours a day, she argues, does not unduly limit parents' influence on children's views and ideas. Yes, it does.
Okay, here's the thing. It's hard to compete with that. If my kids are gone for, well, let's just say 8 or 9 hours. By the time you go there, come home, whatever, mom and dad get home from work, get off at 5, home by 6, getting supper ready. Supper's ready by 7:30. You eat. It's time for baths. you do homework, whatever. By the time all this is done, it's 9 o'clock and you haven't seen your kids very much.
Mm-hmm. For 5 days a week.
Yeah, 5 days a week.
And
then if they have baseball on Saturday or something, you're gone from doing that. Listen, it's just you cannot keep up with that kind of schedule.
You have it's basic mathematics. It really is. And I get that some parents did very well making sure that and not allowing all those extracurricular activities so that all the time was absorbed in public school systems. I totally get that and I appreciate that. I just don't think in the long run that it'll work out well. So listen to what she says here. The issue is, do we think that parents should have 24/7 essentially authoritarian control over their children from ages 0 to 18?
Yes.
Yes.
I do.
I agree with that. Yep.
Yeah, I do, ma'am.
Yeah, I want my children to submit to me.
Yeah.
I want them to obey. So therefore, I need to be somewhat authoritarian in the right way, in the biblical way, in a godly way.
In a loving way.
Yes, to have authority over my children to make them obey. And by the way, I do spank my kids. Trigger warning for those. I'm sure this would I'd just be thrown right into the child abuse. That's probably really what she's talking about.
Gosh, who knows, man?
It's probably in her in that category.
In her worldview, again, in her worldview. Okay, I'm going to explain this well, hopefully, Lord willing, this week. When you have an atheistic, naturalistic, materialistic worldview, where you believe that our ancestors were fish, that there is no meaning or purpose to this universe, to our existence, to tomorrow, to 100 years from now, she has to sit. I want to ask her the question. You behold and believe to all these things. Why do you think something is inherently wrong with child abuse? As a Christian, I can say, yes, child abuse is immoral, it's evil, and it's wicked because these are little image bearers of God.
She doesn't believe in God. She doesn't believe in the Scripture. Right. She doesn't believe in a moral standard. So how can she point out moral or immoral things like child abuse?
Right. She would probably object to a universal, objective morality,
right,
to a universal, objective truth.
Right.
Yet she has this whole article about what she feels. Here, I'll put it this way: she probably objects to a universal, objective standard of right and wrong. Mm-hmm. But she's written this entire article about what she believes is right and what she believes is wrong.
Exactly.
That's the point. And that, when your worldview is that inconsistent, you automatically forfeit the debate.
Right. So that last quote where she talks about essential authoritarian control for 24/7 over the children, she thinks that's dangerous. That's another way that you...
Right, of course she does.
Throw out these extreme words.
I don't think here's the thing. I don't think she really believes it's dangerous. Mm-hmm. I think she just doesn't like it, so she's going to call it dangerous.
Right. So listen to this argument, which is complete idiocy. It's just, she does not see this for what this is. I think it's also dangerous to put powerful people, she's the powerful people, in charge of the powerless, the children that she wants, and to give the powerful ones total authority. You are the powerful people.
Yeah, I'm not all that powerful, man. Are you powerful?
No, I'm like, you're the one.
Yeah, you're the elite.
And you're telling me that this is her argument to me, that I'm the dangerous, powerful person over the powerless people, the children in my home, and I've been given total authority. Well, as a husband, I have the authority in my home. I have authority over my children. Yes, I have some authority over my wife, according to the standards of the Scriptures. Not to abuse, not to be heavy-handed, but to be loving and according to the Scriptures.
Right.
And I have joyful children, and I have a joyful wife.
Our job is to love our wives as Christ loved His church. You know how hard that is?
Yeah, it's a stinking possibility. So, this is what it really comes down to. She concedes that in some situations, homeschooling may be justified and effective. So she's not opposed 100% to homeschooling.
Oh, good. I wonder what her justification
No doubt
are.
there are some parents who are motivated and capable of giving an education that's of a higher quality and is as broad in scope as what's happening in the public school system, which, as we talked about, the teachers are handcuffed. The scope is not that broad. It's very narrow, according to the guidelines that the government has given them.
Because of standardized testing,
Yes.
mainly.
So to say that it's broad in scope, is not truthful. Bartholet believes that if parents want permission.
Oh, I have to. Who do we get permission from?
The government, to opt out of schools, the burden of proving that their case is justified should fall on the parents. In another article, what he's referring to here is she believes that if there's a case for bullying and the child needs to be out of the school system, again, there's a form of abuse. So in her argument,
she's refuting her own argument.
Yeah. So then you can homeschool, or if you want flexibility so that your child can be, really concentrate on sports or arts or whatever, you can homeschool. But if it's simply for conservative Christian values, that's wrong.
So I got it. Here's what she's arguing. If you want to make something else God, you can homeschool your kids. If you want to do it because of the worship and admonition of the one true God,
right,
you can't.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Harvard professor.
So, why is this important? She's not going to listen to what we've said.
You don't think she'll watch this video?
I don't think so. I don't think if we could find a way to send it to her.
Book.
We have a book. I don't think if we could find a way to send it to her, she would watch the video. Most people like them are so elite and so in their ivory towers that we're just little peons that they don't care about. Okay, look, I didn't even use proper grammar earlier, so surely I can't educate my kids in proof and point. That's why she had to write this article. Here's the real thing. This should not surprise Christians. Because what she just said about if kids want to do this and this, that's great for homeschooling. Christian values, bad. No. She's really simply, she hates God. She does. She's a God hater. And she wants to suppress that light and truth anywhere that it's at and push it down. So if it's in homeschool, let's get rid of that. Yeah. This should not surprise us. Jesus told us that this would happen. We shouldn't stand back as Christians and go, oh my gosh.
Jesus is not a false prophet.
Yeah, he said this was going to happen, so it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So don't be surprised when these things come. And we shouldn't rise up and have riots and try to change whatever. What we should do is concentrate on, first of all, she's not going to have much effect on this as of right now. Potentially down the road there could be more movement towards this direction.
I think, foundation, we have to understand this, everything, this is a gospel issue.
Right.
We have critiqued this woman's article. And I would say we've probably critiqued it pretty harshly and sternly. Mm-hmm. Because she needs the gospel.
Right.
She needs, and I would imagine she's probably heard it before since she lives where she lives and she has some understanding of what Christians teach.
It's probably written somewhere still, hidden somewhere in Harvard.
In Harvard, yeah. But she needs the gospel. Mm-hmm. She needs to... Because here's the thing. She knows the one true God that exists. Like you were talking about earlier, though, just a minute ago, she suppresses that truth in her unrighteousness. Mm-hmm. She doesn't want to deal with that because she don't want to serve the one true God. She wants to be God over her own life.
But notice she writes an 80-page paper that's probably very well put together, right? Very articulate, very organized.
And she probably did a ton of research.
Yes, and so you don't look at her and go, man, that's an evil, wicked woman that hates God. You're right. But the devil can come as an angel of light and not look very wicked. She hates God because she's attacking and saying that Christian world values are this: female subserviency, bad; white supremacy, a threat to democracy. Do you see how that's working out? And potential abusing of children. Those are the things that, for her, fall under the category of conservative Christian homeschooling.
And she clearly says what God says is good, she calls evil. So she needs the gospel. She needs to know that she is, like us, a depraved wretch. And we're a depraved wretch while God is in heaven and He's holy, righteous, and just. So what does a holy, righteous, and just God do with depraved wretches? He pours His wrath out on them unless there's a mediator. And that mediator is Jesus Christ.
Yep.
Who lived the perfect life that we can't, went to the cross and willingly laid down His life for His sheep, took on all the wrath that we deserve, and 3 days later rose from the dead. And He currently, right now, sits at the right hand of the Father. He is building His church despite people like this. The gates of hell are not going to prevail despite of people like this giving it their best efforts. And guess what? I'll throw this one in there too. He says He's going to make all His enemies His footstool before He returns.
Yeah. And I think that we can't... Don't think that we're losing. Don't think that this shouldn't be a shocker to Christians, but view it for what it is. It is a woman who hates God, who needs Christ. She's in her own sin, and even though she's extremely intelligent and articulate and you can look at her arguments, and if you know the truth, you can see the falsehoods in all of it. And you can look and say, the reality is if the gospel advances and hearts are changed by the power of the Holy Spirit, you don't have people writing these things. You don't have people attacking homeschool. You don't need to change law. You need to change people's hearts.
Right.
So, I have a new closing thing.
You're switching things
I'm going to
up?
switch it up.
Oh, man.
It's going to be fitting
Hold on.
later on.
Before we hit that,
Okay.
just one more time, be sure to subscribe, like this video, leave a comment down below in the comment section, and share it, share it with somebody you love.
Yep.
We will pick a winner next week on the show here.
Yep.
And then we will reach out to you. We'll tell you to email us your address and everything so we can mail this book to you.
Yep.
Go ahead, Cody.
Here it is. 1 Corinthians 10:31. This is what we want you to leave with. This is why we're doing these things. So that whether you eat or whether you drink, whatever you do all to the glory of God.
Right on. Thanks for watching. Have a good week. And God bless you.